Welcome, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Welcome to Austin. Many of you have been here several times. Those of you who have not been here before, welcome. It's a very complex and crazy city. As you can see, there's a lot of construction and projects going on, which makes it very difficult to get around. That's normal anyways. But the changing landscape, as our theme is for this conference, is very applicable to both Austin and the University of Texas, where I work. We have a lot of growth, a lot of campus infrastructure getting put in place. A medical school, engineering, and business schools are both growing. And we're tasked with adding all of that to what we do normally, which is to supply the campus power needs with the same budget. So, Juan's doing a great job of that. We all have about 6 jobs each now. Thank you, Juan. So we do have a great wealth of technical knowledge here, thanks to all the presenters who brought their experience and knowledge here. I'm going to be picking a lot of brains. We're dealing with a lot of things in our house, which is new to us, and we certainly welcome any advice and experience and horror stories that you can bring. And of course, I'm more than willing to share our own fun times with you. So please talk to any of the UT folks, any of the City of Austin folks who might be here, and please just enjoy yourself. All right, thank you. Welcome to Austin.
The theme of this conference is the changing landscape. What's really happening to our industry? The pace of change we're seeing in energy utilities, record low fuel prices, growing volatility in the power markets, regulatory uncertainty. I don't know, for some of you who were in the Clean Power Plan, the deeper dive yesterday. Well, the Supreme Court took our hose out of our air tank last night, and the Clean Power Plan has been issued a stay for the time being, so stay tuned on that. But I guess I want to ask this question to the panelists, because I did hear this integration of utilities and facilities, that there really has been this recognition that you kind of have to control both if you're going to really manage your budget and drive your consumption and your emissions. But from your view, in the last 5 years, what's been the most significant change on campus? Is it budget, staffing, emissions, master planning? Juan, you mentioned, footprint. What have you seen in the last 5 years that's changed the landscape of operating a utility system on a campus? Tom?
I think the largest thing that's hit us is fracking. A few years ago, we had record gas prices, and my energy budget was being just blown out of the water year after year. And, I never thought we would see sub $3 gas at the Henry Hub. So that ripples into our budgets, and our budgets are down, and everybody's happy. We are still putting money away for a rainy day when the inevitable happens and energy prices turn around again. But as I said earlier, we're doing energy conservation projects, and we're justifying them on a simple payback, and it gets a lot harder to justify projects when you're looking at very inexpensive gas, and the gas directly affects electric prices. So it's making it much harder to justify projects.
So, like the Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times, low energy costs actually put a chill on efficiency investments and those returns. Thanks, Tom. Anyone else? Juan?
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge is the fact that, our budgets everybody's budgets are squeezed. And on top of that, we're all building like crazy. And so that really, it creates a lot of real challenges. We're adding 2 million square feet right now as we speak. And there's plans for another 4 million. And so we gotta think about long term. So how do you do that with squeezed budgets and do that as well? And so that's really becoming a real challenge. What is helping is the fact that we have low energy costs. And so we're taking advantage of that. We're buying out as far as we possibly can. which does hurt then, like Tom was saying, it does hurt your ability to be able to invest in the buildings and get an efficiency there, but you got to do it. And so we have to figure out a way to do this, and that's the challenge, is how to get people to understand this pretty complex thing that we're dealing with.
But you're looking ahead, you're not forecasting, $3 Henry Hub pricing for long. You must have a different marker in your future price forecasts, or no?
Well, I mean, we're buying gas out to 2020 now at $3.20.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm buying it now.
Wow.
Not all of it, but I mean, so
Yeah.
I'm looking to hedge out as far as I possibly can,
Yeah.
because that allows me to control my budgets.
Right.
And so the strategy we're going to have is, well, okay, I want to keep my budget flat. Let me take that money and reinvest it. And so that's the strategy that I'm employing with our campus to try and move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else care to comment? Mark?
So at the University of Washington, we've had
Take the mic.
issues with budgets, like everyone else, to the point where we have a running gag on campus. We're the University of Washington. We've changed to a university in Washington. I think state funding has dropped below 10% of our operating funds, so
Wow.
it's all federal and donations and borrowing. So that's been a particular challenge, especially with the massive building that all our campuses seem to be doing. And then the other challenge for us has been being in the limelight. We're not used to being a focus of the campus. We preferred the academic side of the house, like I said earlier, not even realized that we had a power plant. But now we're a general topic of discussion. What are you going to do about our emissions? And of course, there's never talk of money, so we've been kind of stuck on that. Every meeting we go to, what are you going to do? Students, what are you going to do? So we've been sort of staying the course, assuming maybe this will blow over. But the provost has come up with some ideas that we distinctly dislike. So we are now actively pursuing the idea of converting to hot water. That will reduce some of our emissions. Again, I mentioned earlier, we're a hydro-based facility, so dramatic drops are out of the question, but we see that as the future for the campus heating for the next 50 years.
Interesting, Mark. Anyone else? Joan, would you care to comment? Thank you, Mark.
Sure. I think for me, since I've only been there 2.5 years, so not going back 5, staffing is really one of the areas that we're struggling with. My position, I came in and with the reorganization, am trying to operate it as a business. I know Juan's been doing that with his utility department for a long time, but a lot of the universities don't really kind of organize themselves as a business, and it's a mindset that a lot of the staff aren't comfortable with. It's providing pressures on them that they haven't had in the past. So I think just getting that education that there's still going to be jobs for folks, but the skill set and the training is very important, and having them reflect on the efficiencies and the performance like a business is something new that we're dealing with.
So sort of changing the internal, mechanism to an enterprise from a receipts or, a funded entity.
Right.
Yeah, that's a challenging undertaking, Joan.
Yeah.
Bob, would you care to add?
Yeah, similar, because and like a lot of people, we've always had to be zero budgeted, so everything we spend comes out of our rates. So our investment, any renewal, our staff, our equipment, our debt, everything's coming out of our rates. So from a unitized rate, that sends the right price signal. So part of the demand side, obviously there's been great, efficiency goals on campus, but the rates send the right signals too. So we've seen a great conservation effort on campus, but we're recovering our investment through a rate based on usage. At the same time, we're telling people to use less, and they are. So then you're getting less in, and we don't have a other way to fund it other than through our rates. So we have to be mindful of that. And the one other part, we talked about the commodity prices coming down, which I think is helpful. It hurts some of the straight comparisons on some ECMs. But the thing that we have to look at is that's not the only part of the what you pay, because while gas is a commodity, is very cheap in New England, a little less this winter, but the last few, very significant to get the gas there. So the cost of getting us the gas is probably more than the commodity. And with electric, while we're seeing the commodity piece, we're a market participant also, we're seeing the commodity piece come down. You still have a lot of other charges on there, with the demand and the capacity and some other pieces to that. And I guess we're forecasting those to continue to go up as they bring in new pipelines to New England and bring in new transmission. We're assuming that's going to be hit on top of that demand piece,
Yeah,
which
so
then
the-
feeds
yeah.
back into why having combined heat and power and other ways to mitigate that demand is helpful. But it's all, as you said, as you run a business, our funding's on our rates. We need to look ahead and do renewal. We need to be doing investment. But our way of collecting that is doing what we're asking them to do, use less, so then we're getting less.
Yes, and so therein lies the challenge, right? Making sure you're producing enough.
What's the long-term plan?
Yeah,
How is that
to
forecast
reinvest
the money?
and renew. Anyone else care to comment? Mark? Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
You know, what's really great about coming to IDEA and events like this is we get to realize we're all singing from the same sheet of music. And we too have been seeing our budgets reduced year over year over year. And it's really forcing us to get creative. And we have to put on our salesman's cap and explain to the administration the value of doing some of these projects. I will say that with the gas prices going down, it's hard to find victories sometimes. And it feels like a victory that the fuel prices are going down. You know, we might be high-fiving and going, look, we've reduced our natural gas prices by about 45 or 46% in the last 5 years, which feels really good. But again, like you said, it makes it tough to sell the projects, but that's where we have to get creative and talk about the value. For us, most of our electricity comes from coal source. And so going with cogen allows us to reduce our greenhouse emissions, which is attractive to the university for us.
And that was going to be my next sort of round of question now, is that, 10 years ago, sustainability wasn't even in the program here. It was all about, valves and et cetera. But, today on campus, are you seeing pressure from certainly your trustees are, signing commitments? Your students, right, your market are looking to move onto a more, a cleaner, greener campus. Is having a low carbon footprint more important than having a winning football team?
For Emory, it is.
Who would like to answer that?
We haven't had a winning team in a while. Recruitment is up, and we don't have a problem with students.
Yeah.
But a CO2 plan is important to many students, but not all.
Right.
But to date, within the administration, reliability and economics are the most important. And we layer on top of that our sustainability goals, is how I like to look at it. Our sustainability people may look at it differently, but I think I know the administration really wants reliability.
Yeah, so first and foremost, the reason you're still sitting here is the lights have stayed on, yes?
Yes.
But at the same time, though, how significant are these pressures? And it would seem to me that now with, under $3 gas, it's getting pretty hard to, integrate other sources. But, Bob?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really, I guess, a question for us. The university and the president said that we're going to cut 30%, 06 to 16. So there's a target, there's a goal. I think the way we've been saying the goal will be met. So it's come from multiple sources. So we've had conservation.
Right.
We've done things on the university utility side that have had significant savings. So even how we source our fuel, we used to be predominantly oil, we're now 99% natural gas. That's had a good. We've done efficiencies on the chill water and on the plant. We've added combined heat and power. We've recently expanded combined heat and power. So on our side, those have had significant pieces. In the region we're in, New England, have had a consistently greener grid, which has helped too. So you have this big chunk of what we've done on campus. You have a big chunk upstream which has been done just through policy and what's going on in the region. And then you have conservation on campus. So all of those will go. So we certainly have a goal. I think the lights for us, that's our role to keep them on, but the university has a goal. And since 16 is now upon us, it's not going to stop. There'll be a forward goal. I think it's always going to be, where are you going next? But it has to be balanced, but it's not a question of not meeting it.
But it seems to me, though, that usually the university central plant is the largest single site of emissions, right? It's the largest single source on campus.
Yeah.
Maybe secondary to faculty air travel, but that's another story. But Ken, in Illinois, are you experiencing these sort of carbon pressure challenges?
Yes, we are, and actually, we signed on to the Climate Action Plan, and we actually just went through a utility master planning effort in order to get better information to upgrade the Climate Action Plan. So we tried to work on those concurrently and kind of integrate them together. One of the things that we've been trying to do is trying to have the sustainability movement help us, and we've been getting a lot of support on energy conservation efforts. We've been able to reduce our consumption over 25% in our existing facilities, and that's been very helpful. And the other thing that we get into is the space issue. And one of the goals in our Climate Action Plan was to limit space growth. So we've been trying to give the sustainability folks another item that they can help on, and that's to try to address better efficiency on space use. Instead of making it bigger, try to make it better and more efficient space use. And that's been pretty successful for us. The other thing that it's allowed us to do is to not expand our central systems. Try to keep our central systems under control, helps with our rates. The other thing, when we've also, as we reduce our consumption, even though the prices are coming down, our rates don't come down too dramatically if we've reduced our consumption, because we're selling less units. We've got an enterprise system as well. So we've worked hard to try to get rate stability and tried to spread it out. Whether we're over or under recovered, we don't make too big an adjustments.
Right.
We take that over a 3-year period.
So you've decoupled that in a way, right? You're not doing an escalator year to year.
We do a reconciliation every year.
Okay.
But if we were under recovered,
Yeah.
1 year and a little over recovered the next week, we spread that, whatever it over under is, over a 3-year period.
I see, right.
And then with also doing a lot of hedging right now too. So.
But let me ask, and maybe, so has the idealism of sustainability been tempered by the realism of running a campus utility? I mean, it seems to me that there's been a partnership in education where maybe the sustainability focus coming in was, solar, wind, renewable, and particularly in the students, and I applaud their idealism, but, has there been, with this convergence of utilities and facilities, have utilities now sort of have a better position in which to influence the process? I think 5 or 6 years ago, you were the whipping post. You were the source of carbon and get your act together. But is that changing? And Mark, you're in a low carbon. I mean, you're in a green electric market at University of Washington. That represents an altogether different challenge. Right. And I would think your students are also pretty green.
We are, I don't know the ranking, but we're in the top 10 of green schools.
Right.
And so we have worked closely with our Environmental Stewardship Office, which has worked out great for us. They do recognize that even though we are the single largest point source on the campus, that much larger emissions come from the campus, particularly transportation and student behavior. So they have focused their efforts on students. And much broader, they're not just focused on carbon, they're focused on renewable food sources, trash collection and separation, composting, the whole broad gamut of what it takes to reduce our impact on the environment. So the students have really embraced that. There's a student fund to help, they call it the Green Seed Fund. Students bring up ideas, the Green Seed Fund funds it, and then the students develop it. So we are lucky in that respect. The administration is focused on the power plant, but the students currently are focused on themselves, and that's been the work of our sustainability office.
So the Green Seed Fund is like a revolving fund, and is it paid out of student activity fee?
Correct.
Yeah, very good. And I think, Mark, you mentioned, that's one of the advantages of coming to IDEA. We can sort of swap plays in the playbook, right? And bring, bring that audible back if need be. And anyone else care to comment on the, Mark? Yes.
Yeah, our facilities department works closely with our Office of Sustainability. I think anything we can do to generate excitement for sustainability amongst the students does nothing but help us sell our story. We all want to do the best that we can for our campuses. We all want to be as energy efficient as possible. And it's hard to get the dollars sometimes. As I mentioned, in the shrinking budgets, how do we get those dollars? But if we can use that sustainability as an angle to sell a story that, you know, by implementing these controls, we're going to be more energy efficient. By implementing this, it will help us achieve our emissions goals. So I think it really helps sell our story.
And I don't know if you know, one of the stories that we've heard so much about, Tom's at Princeton with, you know, your response to Sandy and the resiliency and, you know, sort of keeping things running seems to have helped our utility systems be recognized in a new light as an essential asset and really reliable infrastructure. I want to talk a little bit about water, because here we are, we're in Texas, we have Arizona and people from the South. One of the challenges I think is emerging. So sustainability is this new trend. It's in our lexicon now. But water is becoming so much more important. How are you all addressing water management and conservation and recovery? Joan and then Juan.
Sure. Emory, prior to my arrival, had worked with a vendor to design and develop a reclaimed water system, recognizing that the utility water use was about 40% of our campus consumption. And so we actually have a reclaimed facility just down the roadway from our building where they take sanitary sewer, they process it, and then we redistribute it to our 3 central chiller plants and some to our steam plant for makeup water. And I think it really was just an important step forward for our community. It set a great example in the Atlanta region that it could be done without significant resources. We actually structured it similar to a power purchase agreement. It's a water purchase agreement, so Emory didn't have to use any upfront capital. We also indexed it to what we would have been paying the local water utility. So as far as budget, there really wasn't a budget difference. So that's really just been eye-opening for Emory and the community and other organizations in Atlanta. CDC is looking into it. Other higher eds, I know some of you out there are looking into it. And so that really jump-started our focus on water. What it also showed us is that's not water conservation. That's just another way to reuse the water. So now we're going to actually have to put a little more concentrated effort on reducing water usage as well. And so that's probably our area of focus in the next 5 years.
But an important bucket, really, for the central utility plan is to reclaim this water. Thanks, Joan.
Yep.
Juan, I know you've done some innovative things here. And Juan, our friends from the Middle East who are here, I was telling them about your water reclamation. They're going to want to really understand it. But share that with us.
Yeah, sure. So we've been, really since the 80s, we've been capturing the condensate off the AC coils, and we run it back through our tunnels and use it as makeup in our cooling tower. So it adds up. I mean, we've recovered on an annual basis as much as 60 million gallons. So our utility plant water use was about half of the campus use. It was about 800 million gallons. But with irrigation controls on the building sides, they've actually cut that down to around 600 to half. Now we're at about 600 million gallons. So we've got about 200 million gallons out of it. But part of that was the reclaimed water, the irrigation use, and we also we capture water from all perimeter drains around buildings, swimming pools. We capture all that water, bring it all back and use it in our cooling towers. But now we're starting to use reclaimed water from the city also. So we purchased it from them, and we have it in one chilling station now, and it's been very, very effective. And the new chilling station that we're going to be driving around is going to be using reclaimed water as well. So we've been able to cut our water use from what was 400 million down to around 320. And so, and that's going to drop even more so with the reclaimed water. So, yeah, so it's efficiency also helps because you're rejecting less heat, so you're using less water. So we're a lot more less blow down, because water for us in Austin is very, very expensive. Our sewer charge is like $8 per thousand. So the more I blow down, the more it costs me. So I have to pay attention to that. My water use is about 5, whereas my reclaimed water is 150. So it's also economic. So not only are we saving water, we're actually saving a little bit of money as well, too, that we can take back and reinvest back into the organization.
Yeah, and I would think, maybe 10 years ago, water was, barely a line item, right? I mean, it was, but today it's become, with the record drought, and I think as a trend, certainly Arizona, Texas, but across the country, water is becoming, I think, much more valuable. Mark, would you care to add? Yeah, Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona, obviously we're in arid climate there. We do not capture condensate off of air handlers so far. We haven't found it to pencil out. Our humidities are so low almost all year round.
It's a dry heat, yeah.
Very dry. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a blowtorch.
I've heard that.
Blowtorch. And so it hasn't penciled out, but we do a lot of rainwater harvesting. We also do a lot of irrigation with reclaimed water. So 85% of our irrigation is with reclaimed water. I'm excited to speak with Juan because of the use in the towers. We tried reclaimed water in the towers 10 years ago, but they were high in phosphates. And since that time, the wastewater plant has updated itself and is putting out a much higher quality water, so they tell us. And so we're running some studies on it right now to see how it'll work. And I understand Juan is using a blend of reclaim with domestic water, which is exciting because that's another way to save water. We're also getting more granular in how we look at our water use in the buildings. And so if we can get meters on all of the buildings and understand our water usage within the building, maybe identify some areas of opportunity there.
Thanks, Mark. I know our friends from Dubai, dry heat is not the challenge. You have humidity and wet bulb as well. You have them both in plenty of measure, yes. And they've been using treated sewage effluent and actually, so I think there's I think some convergence that we could have here. So thank you very much. And anyone else have a water view? No? Very good. So one of the other things I think we're seeing is record expansion on campus. Really, the built environment is growing. How are you finding that pattern, competing for space, getting rights of way, connecting, the new buildings? How is this the expansion on campus affecting your life? Juan, you're living through. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, what it's forced us to do is to be a lot more innovative. Because the hallmark for us has been we have 9 miles of tunnels. I can't afford tunnels anymore. In Austin, it's all solid limestone, so it's tough to build tunnels now. So for the medical district, we're adding about 5,000 feet of pipe or so, and all that's underground, direct buried. So I couldn't use steam anymore. So we're using a hybrid now. We have our main campus is all steam-based, but that area is going to be fed with heat pump chillers and not water, 150-degree water. Now I can avoid tunnels. So we had to become very innovative in terms of how we did that. And I think it's going to work out to be pretty successful, because the challenge is not just we're constrained and we're adding more space on the perimeter, but also the constraint is I said, okay, we want to build a medical school here, and it's going to cost what, and what's it going to do to our rates? How are we going to afford this? And so we had to figure out a way to do this in a way where it didn't impact the budget. And so fortunately, I think we worked out a way where everybody's paying a blended cost, and we've been able to finagle our way through that. But it's becoming much, much, much more challenging to do these kinds of expansions.
And are you finding, I don't know if it was Ken or Mark, but you mentioned that by reducing the demand within your facilities, you're actually reclaiming capacity and avoiding capacity investments. Is that also part of the alchemy here, Ken?
Yes, we've been successful in doing that. We've actually been able to bring our peak demand. A good example, we reduced our peak demand about 7.5 megawatts through conservation. And then when we did our thermal storage, we got a 6.5 million thermal storage tank, and we got it down about 11 or 12 megawatts, that we reduced our peak demand. But on the other hand, with the type of growth that sometimes we get with a research institution, we have one building that came online, our national supercomputer building, and the Blue Waters computer itself is running between 11 and 12 megawatts continuously just for that one load. So even though we brought it down, we went back to the peak we had before, but if we wouldn't have done the conservation, we wouldn't have been able to do that without a massive upgrade to our
Yeah.
system. So and the other thing that's a big advantage to us, when we're able to conserve, we've got a central chilled water system as well. And as we conserve in one building, that frees up capacity in another, that you don't have that advantage if you've got, distributed building chillers.
Right.
So that's been helpful, that we can keep from growing our overall system with some expansion in certain areas.
So the fact that you've aggregated the demand and the capacity in a central plant, then that allows you to sort of, give and take and really reclaim that value and redirect it. Whereas if you had chillers in every building, sunk cost, no convergence. Tom, I know you guys at Princeton are really working hard on the demand side and taking the load down. What's been your experience?
Well, as I said, we have an energy conservation program, and we justify projects on a simple payback. But part of that simple payback is a utility assessment. We actually credit the energy savings projects with how much capacity we're saving in the central plant.
Okay.
We do that on existing buildings, and we also do it when we're trying to figure out what's the best system to put into new construction. So we'll do a life cycle analysis on it, and we'll put in that utility savings. And sometimes the savings and capacity at the plant actually is more than the project we're looking at in the building. And a good example of that is a heat recovery coil on a research air handler. It used to be, it didn't quite pencil out to put that in. When we started looking at the capacity savings in the plant, it more than paid for itself. And now all research facilities are getting the heat recovery coils. And we're applying that to all our energy conservation stuff. And we're seeing steam loads this year that are really low for a given outside temperature. And so it is paying off.
But does it then require that these budgets be integrated, at the top? Because it used to be, the old days, you had a construction budget, a capital project, for a building, and then you had the utilities budget, and they were not connected. So now there is a recognition within the institution that these value streams transfer.
Yes, and that's helped a lot. Just getting that these numbers, doing a life cycle cost
Right.
on the new systems and buildings has been a godsend.
Right.
Now the hard part is, okay, you've justified it, and you go back to the VP and say, okay, we need more money. And he says, he supports it, but then he's got to go find the money.
Yeah.
But what really helped this process is the vice president of facilities who's making these decisions used to be president of IDA.
Yeah, Mike McKay, God
Yes.
bless him. Yeah.
So that's really helped this whole process.
He's been drinking the Kool-Aid for 30 years, so
Yes.
we're in good shape. No, thanks, Tom. Let's give our panelists a nice round of applause and thank them for their support and participation.